This evening, I want to tell you a short story. In Acts 16 and verse 1, we find Paul talking about a young man called Timothy. It says his father was a Greek, therefore his name was Timotheus to his father. But then later in 2 Timothy 1 and verse 5, we find Paul talking about the young preacher or the young man, Timothy. In verse 5, he says, "When I call to remembrance the genuine faith that is in you, which dwelt first in your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice, and I am persuaded is in you also." My son one day looked at that, he told me that story, and he says, "You know, Dad," said, "I look back on my life and I see that I had a similar incident happen to me like that with my grandmother." One day he was in her kitchen and he's looking around, and here's this old plate, kind of cracked, got a few chips on it. And he says, "What's this for?" And it's in a big place, right little place where everybody can see it, or she can see it when she's standing at the sink. She'll reach over and touch it, rub it. That's it. He said, "What's that for?" And she says, "That's my reading plate." He said, "Your reading plate?" He said, "I don't see no words on it." So she says, "Oh, they're there. And one day, someday, I'll read it to you." So he says, "Now maybe Grandma's getting a little old and squirrely, but she's going to read my plate, read her plate to me." So that's the reading plate then. So time passes, the young man, my son, gets married, has children, and he's standing in the kitchen, and there's that plate. And he says, "You never have told me about your plate." And she says, "Today's a good day. I'm going to read to you. I'm going to read my plate to you." And the thing of it is that she read the plate to him, and what it consisted of was her story. How she come from, with her mother and two sisters. And they had to sell everything they had because they didn't have any money. And they come from Ireland all the way to the United States. And she said, "That's my plate. And the other plates, my sister has her plate, and my other sister has her plate." She says, "But that's my plate. And one day it's going to be your plate." So you need to know the story. So she places the plate on the table, and she tells him about how that they came to America and how that she wound up marrying someone and moving to Oklahoma. And she says, my son looks at it and he says, "That's sort of our story, isn't it? How she become a Christian, how he become a Christian. My son likewise believed what his mother and his grandmother told him, and he become a Christian. He become a part of the story of Christ." You see, becoming a Christian is more than just doing good and saying good things and visiting people, He believed the story that Christ's death, burial, and resurrection were real, and he believed them. And the key here is he believed it because his grandmother told him about it. It was real. The evidence can be found right here in the Bible for us. The Bible is not our reading plate, but our reading book. And we read that Timothy became a Christian. And it was because his grandmother and his mother had helped him to understand what the Bible was, who Christ was, and he came to believe. Now, what we need to understand tonight is that we can become part of the story of Christ. Every time that we gather here, we learn something new. Do you believe it? You know, it's hard to believe that somebody can get killed and then rise from the dead. But you know, it's a hard story, isn't it? It was a hard story then, but he believed it. It's a hard story today, but do you believe it? Just like they did. You can become part of God's family, and you can become part of the story of Christ. And that's our story for tonight. Listen to what the Bible has to say to you, and repeat it to your children. Please. Thank you.